This is the Fixerpunk podcast, and this is the Fixing the Fixerpunk episode, where I take a break from talking about politics to rant about the problems in our lives that happen to be caused, in part, by politics. I'm Grayson Peltier. It's been a while since I've done a proper Fixing the Fixerpunk episode. I got more into a lesson on the last one. Usually the pace is one per month. And I did do one last month, but it got a lot more into teaching a lesson than I expected it to. So this month I kind of have like 2 months of my life that I probably need to go through and discuss progress on or lack thereof, and discuss some of the ways that I am finding to try to improve. But I will tell you, it definitely feels pretty lonely. It feels kind of bleak right now, especially with what's going on in the world with this recession, with the risk of global economic collapse precipitated by Republicans who just want to force people back into bad situations. And the thing is that you can have the best plan in the world, and I felt like I did, or maybe it's not the best plan in the world, but it was a plan to try to improve just about every area of my life. I had set aside some money, I had set aside some time. I had taken the time to try to put myself through methods of improving myself and put in the work just for it all to not work the way that it's supposed to. And I want to here talk a little bit about what I have figured out from sort of failing, and also some more practical advice. I may do a separate advocacy notes episode because a lot of what has derailed me in my progress in just about everything, whether it's growing the show, whether it's growing out my business, and trying to improve my fitness and my athleticism and all that, has been health issues, which is kind of no surprise, but not just my own health issues, also some family members as well. I could definitely relate when Brandon Cutler on AEW was talking about how he spent way more time in hospital rooms than he would have ever wanted to be. Obviously, my family is not going through what the elite are going through on AEW, but there have been a few members of my family who've had significant illnesses, and there have been a lot of like different little things over the past many, many years that have come up and have derailed my progress, and it makes me feel very upset because I'm coming up on 27 years old, and I'm looking back and I'm like, nothing has really changed, or there isn't that drastic change that you would see on a poster, on an advertisement, in some sort of story in Forbes, Business Week, or on the fitness side, and like Muscle and Fitness, or in Men's Health, or what have you. You see these time frames, and you see these ways that that people change in a certain given time frame, and you believe that you can do it, and that is a good thing. In some ways, having a useful delusion is useful, and believing that you can achieve something that's beyond what is reasonable might actually be helpful to you. But generally, in terms of how systems and programs and things like that to try to improve any area of your life, whether it be financial, whether it be physical or mental, they tend to operate on a set of assumptions, and they're oversimplified assumptions. And typically, if you see some sort of dramatic or drastic transformation in any area, then these assumptions are all going to be true. So the first one is that you're committed to that plan for that goal and not having multiple competing interests at the same time. So like somebody who is showing up in some article somewhere about their transformation for their fitness is probably not also simultaneously trying to improve the amount of income they have in every month, or the amount of money they have in the bank, or at least that's taken a back seat. They're probably very financially secure. Like, I was reading some article about a training program that was getting these drastic transformations that you would like almost assume that somebody is on steroids. There's like this gym called, I think it's like Ultimate Performance. It's like a chain of very, very high-end personal training studios that has this like specific physique transformation program. And the program itself is reportedly like $5,400 for a few months. And that person probably, they may have the competing interest of their job, but that has been programmed for. But they are financially secure. Presumably, everything in their life is stable enough where they can spend that amount of money. So that is skewing the sample. And it is an assumption that if it is not true for you, your results may vary. And then secondly is full compliance. Obviously, you would have to fully comply. You have to put full effort, full discipline into anything like that, whether it's from going on the weight loss program, the physique transformation program. You have to be fully compliant with those programs. And these things, again, are the assumptions of most of these transformations that occur within a defined time period, defined short time period. If any of these things are not true, it doesn't mean that you're a hopeless case. And that's what I have to keep telling myself, because obviously for me to take as long as I have to try to see the dismal progress that I have, and I have embarrassed myself a few times on my TikTok at Fixerpunk in terms of the fitness progress side, showing the bit of progress that I've had over a very long period of time. It doesn't mean you're a hopeless case. It just means that the approach is not going to work for you. And that's one of the things that in any area in a late-stage capitalist society, we are being given these narratives under assumptions that are false. And you do have to, though, obviously, you do have to show a certain level of effort, discipline, compliance. You have to be fully able to adhere. Like in that fitness example, the workouts were like 6 days a week and pretty darn intense. And the diets were extremely strict, highly calibrated. Some of these things are probably gimmicked a little bit to make things harder deliberately, to make it seem like they're getting something very special for that $5,400. Some of that stuff, the stuff they may not be entirely true. And on the finance side, with all the financial stories as well, certainly full compliance for somebody who has a lot of money inherited from their parents or has money that's been given to them is going to look a lot different than for somebody who is working a minimum wage job. But it assumes full compliance generally. And then lastly, which is the part that I was alluding to a little bit, and I've been alluding to it a little bit this whole time, is that material circumstances and conditions are conducive. So that basically means I've come up with a motto: nothing changes you like material conditions do. I have gone through various phases of various programs, methods, and ways to change myself. But what preceded them, what allowed me to be able to do the work and, of course, use my will and my discipline and my effort and my everything about me that I can bring to the table, is the fact that there was a table for me to bring it to. And in some cases, that does not exist. And material conditions is what enables these things to happen. Sometimes you have minimal material conditions, and then you can get a certain result out of that. And there are ways to optimize from a minimal condition, but of course, optimized from a minimal condition is going to be far different than optimized from a maximal condition. So the amount of money that somebody who is making $50,000 a year is able to save is going to be way different than the amount of money that somebody who's making $100,000 a year can save. So the point of this is not, and this is the thing, and I've been realizing this, I wrote that whole article about narratives of redemptive combat a few months back. I asked myself, am I really fighting hard enough for these things? And it's hard for me to give myself an answer, and it's a rhetorical question, and I know that, and I know that I'm deliberately posing to myself a rhetorical question. But the result of fighting hard enough for someone in different circumstances is going to look different. And somebody could act minimally and succeed as well. And that is sort of a conundrum in this system as well, that it's not necessarily, even in areas where you believe that there is an absolute meritocracy, you have to stop gaslighting yourself. And that is one of the things in terms of self-help. It's not about letting yourself off the hook necessarily for bad behavior, which that is a big problem for me. I have been letting myself off the hook for bad behavior all the time. It's supposed to be, it's summer coming up. And another type of material condition is the goal, is the hope that you have for your goal, is also a material condition. Because if what is around you is giving you hope, that is going to motivate you. If what is around you is not giving you hope, then that is not going to motivate you. So, and that goes down even to that goes for anything from your health and your family circumstances. Like if you're there and you have something else that you're focusing on, you're trying to focus on getting better from an illness. Like for me, I was out with COVID for a month. That messed me up in terms of searching for different jobs and income sources, messed up the schedule of this podcast. So that is a material condition. So it doesn't even have to be socioeconomic. It could be health. It could be family. It could be any one of a number of things. But the conditions have to be such that it gives you hope. I recall a quote from Adam Cole. I can't exactly recall exactly what he said, but he's like that he didn't, that the reason why he was able to return to the wrestling ring after being out for months and months with 2 very serious concussions was that he never lost hope. And for somebody like Adam Cole, of course, he had a very, very tough road, but he had a path, he had a way to go forward. And he had a very, very clear vision of that. And that is something that is sort of pretty much in your control. But circumstances and conditions can cloud that up, because if you know that at the end of the tunnel is not something that you necessarily want, or that you know that the likely outcome is going to be something that you don't want, then why would you go for that? Like in my case, I'm like, okay, I am going to take all this time to improve my skills in recording this podcast and in growing my business, and I'm going to wind up in the same economic position that I was before, because that's kind of what I keep seeing happening. And I hear in the news about this recession, and I see that there's a good chance that I could lose health insurance as well, because this Medicaid work requirement is going to be very unfriendly to entrepreneurs. And I see that the end outcome of all of this is going to be futile, that it is going to drive me back into the lowest paying job possible. I'm not going to be able to hold out through to election season and get a good paying job in my profession that I went to school for, that I'm trained for, and I'd be paying a student loan for something that I'm not even getting. So that hopelessness feeds into everything. That hopelessness about my economic situation feeds into, oh crap, I have a ton of money saved up in savings, but that money's feeling like it's going to be gone pretty soon. Between medical expenses and everything else, thinking that money may be gone soon. So I'm not going to get to take that vacation over the summer where I'm going to need to be in full gear ready shape, where I'm going to need to look aesthetic in a pair of board shorts. So I don't have that motivation to go and at 12 midnight when I'm going to go and binge eat, and I'm going to go and binge eat whatever food it is that I'm going to have, then I don't have that motivation to avoid that, because that does not seem like it's something that's going to happen. So when that hope goes away, then that demotivates you. So even if it is possible, and this is something you can kind of trick yourself a little bit, but the way the system is designed is it's designed to take your hopes and your dreams away from you. And the only way to change that is to change the material circumstances around you. And that feeds into everything else. So everything feeds into everything else. And I'm not saying, again, I'm me going and overeating like that at night is objectively bad. That is a bad thing for me to be doing. But there is a response, and there is something that is leading me down that path. And that hopelessness just comes from it not happening and it not being fulfilled. And you should not lose hope. But if we want to become better as a society and promote people actually getting better in their lives, then we have to create the environment where people have the ability to have something to hope for. And really this starts with sort of having a collective acknowledgement of things, because you hear from every single time you hear narratives around like coaching for improving your business, improving your finances, improving your life in general, it's very, very individual. And a lot of coaching professionals, like I explained, the sample sizes and the people, the assumptions that go into these models of the guy who saved up $1 million by the time he was 30, the assumptions that go into the guy who has his shredded obliques by summer in only 3 months, the assumptions that go into that, and the way that coaching professionals and experts and all of that, they see things, is they see things through the lens of somebody who has already met the preconditions of having material conditions be perfect. And the thing is that the overwhelming majority of people are not in perfect material conditions to improve themselves or to become better. But that does not preclude them from being better. Thing is that it takes a lot more intelligence and a lot more skill, a lot more nuance. But it is possible to, in less than ideal circumstances, achieve good results. But it's a matter of that you can't really get through the door. You can't really start to work on those things, so you're sort of on your own, because you're like, okay, you go to experts and people, even in the mental health realm, trying to improve your mental health, and you're like, okay, there's an amazing treatment for my condition, but it costs $10,000. And the reason why that may be is because people who can pay $10,000 are more stable and more receptive and more able to succeed. But it doesn't mean that couldn't help somebody who was in a lower socioeconomic status. And in fact, it can benefit those people even more. But because of the way we design things, we only study the interventions that work best on the dominant class. So we only study these highly regimented programs that require a ton of effort, and not perhaps some sort of alternative method that can produce results. So like in my fitness, generally the old, like everybody says, like you have a specific workout plan where you do a specific workout at each specific day. For me, instead, I reverse engineer the research. There's a clip from the Huberman Lab podcast. I don't know if I'll be able to find it, but you need about 10 to 15 reps or sets per week minimum to grow a particular muscle. So instead of setting up that I have to do a certain number of reps and a certain number of sets per workout, I set up like, can I get to, because some days my energy, because of my autistic burnout and my mental stuff, my energy will wax and wane by the day. So if I can, by the end of the week, get to that number of sets, then at least my muscles are going to grow in that fashion. If I don't have necessarily a regimented meal plan, because I have I have a family that loves to have tons of parties. So then I can kind of find a way to let myself go a little bit during that time. But I've kind of struggled with that a little bit. But finding ways to then just work out really, really intensely beforehand. And then I have trouble like tracking calories and not eating a ton of like sweets. So instead of buying, like, I used to be the kind of person who would buy just those gigantic like family size packages of Oreos from Walmart, the generic great value kind. And I would just go through, those were like $3-4. I would go through like one of those a week. Now I buy like those Quest protein cookies and Fiber One. The Fiber One 70-calorie brownies have saved me in so many different ways. Those have basically been a lifesaver for me. So I've gotten those. I've gotten the Skinny Pop popcorn for the salty snacks. The Special K 100-calorie crisps. For more substantial protein, I get the pure protein bars from Costco. So instead of staying on an extremely clean diet and just completely avoiding sweets and all that, I basically engage in harm reduction when it comes to my fitness. And I have those things instead. Of course, material conditions enable me to do that because the money I'm spending way more on food than I would if I was eating really unhealthy. If I was doing all like lower protein stuff, if I was just buying the canned stuff from Walmart along with my pack of my pack of generic Great Value Oreos, if I was buying just like regular pasta instead of protein pasta, doing the whole Dave Ramsey thing of just eating beans and rice, which that's just a very, very, very good way of, again, you have to pick your goal, you have to pick what you're doing, or you have to optimize and balance competing interests. As a policy guy, I know a lot about balancing competing interests. Most coaching professionals, finance professionals, people who are there to improve your life, they are there to push you to 110% of what your possibilities are in that one particular area. I, on the other hand, thinking about personal growth like a politician, know that 50% is more reasonable and know how to cobble together 50% over a certain period of time to try to improve things. So that is where my political education that cost me a ton of money is helping me to improve my life, is that I know how to balance competing interests when they don't. But yeah, the old Dave Ramsey beans and rice and beans, that thing will, if that's your whole diet, that'll kill your gains very, very easily. So, what you want to actually do is know that, this is, I am doing the best within the circumstances that I've given, and that includes your mental state. Because if my mind was a bit sharper than it is now, I wasn't as autistic, I didn't have as bad of ADD, I would maybe be able to get results quicker. I can't seem to bring myself to track calories properly. I don't know why. I just go off on food at night, and then anytime things are just like not prepared or whatever, or not, if it's not easily scannable, if I can't just scan the barcode into my MyFitnessPal app, then tracking then falls apart. And in a family where there's a lot of home-cooked meals, that is a big problem. I have yet to engineer the proper solution around that, and I'm thinking of going back on the bandwagon of hiring coaching professionals to help me with that stuff, but again, money might be a little tighter, and the goal maybe isn't as clear out there in the future. I'm seeing a future where I don't know if I'm going to need to look ripped this summer. It's not like something that's a must. It's not something that has a defined goal date, because that idea of having a defined goal date, setting up your goal, that's excellent logic. But if the thing that you're doing it for falls apart, then that is going to be a bit of a problem for you. And that is going to lessen your motivation. It certainly has lessened mine. But if you can find a way to keep going, then things are going to be better for you. And when you're dealing, though, with this feeling like the world is closing in around you and all of your plans are kind of going down the trash, it does get really, really, really hard. And I am going to admit that. And part of this is just a big rant. These episodes are more of a big rant than they are supposed to be about teaching you something. Sometimes you learn something from them, sometimes you don't. Hopefully you did. And if there's something that you want to rant about with me, if you have any thoughts about what I've said, you can call 844-477-PUNK, 844-477-7865. Leave a message anytime, day or night. But what you want to do is you want to find models and examples. And examples of people that have done what you're looking to do in less than ideal circumstances. For me, I shouldn't be looking to the example of the people who got ripped in 3 months by spending $6,000 on an expensive Hollywood personal trainer. As you've surmised from all my shows, I like pro wrestling, so I've heard the story of Sammy Guevara in AEW and how he was coming up as a wrestler, and he was working at Whataburger, working at Subway, and gave me a little bit of hope, because he continued to go for his dreams while under less than ideal economic circumstances. And obviously, we want to say here that you should be able to be treated with dignity in the workplace, regardless of what level you're at. And today's low-wage worker or today's nuisance to a big boss can be tomorrow's champion. So that's why I'm even more enthusiastic about things like union rights and creating economic change that hits all areas of the population, because people that are working on their goals and their dreams are in these types of positions economically, at least in a transitory way. So that example helped me quite a bit. I spoke a little bit about, I've mentioned Darby Allin a few times, who's also one of those pillars in the whole AEW Pillars tournament, if you're following it. But Darby Allin lived in his car while he was trying to become a pro wrestler. And look, he was 2-time TNT champion, one of the best guys in AEW, could possibly become world champion sometime in May. And obviously, these guys have exercised an extreme level of self-discipline while working in those less than ideal circumstances. But it did take quite a bit of time for them to come up. And for me, I have to kind of understand that it is going to take quite a bit of time, and I'm going to have to work through things that are less than ideal. And the one big thing I want to take away is just don't hate yourself for the progress you haven't made. Understand what is possible and try to keep going as best as you can, and find ways to maximize based on your circumstances. Just because you don't align with the ideal, optimal model of doing something doesn't mean that you can't actually do it. But what you do have to keep in mind is that it will be very tumultuous, and your individual circumstances, even if you find an exemplar who had to go through very, very hard times, you may be different from them in ways that you don't understand. Like, obviously me, I have autism. I have these mental health issues. They slow me down. They make me tired. They cause me all these problems. So then me possibly having to work a low-wage job, like going and working at Subway or whatever, would drain me quite a bit, especially that I don't necessarily like the confrontation of customer service. For some reason, I'm much better at it in the political space. I do not know why. So your individual circumstances can and do vary for sure. And it's going to take a lot of trial and error to find methods of optimizing performance. And I have not figured out what the ideal methods are for me just quite yet. And then in terms of like the media business and radio, Street Fight Radio was a big example for me. Unfortunately, because Brett and Brian broke up, that actually got me quite a bit emotionally. It was one of the roadblocks that I faced. Was kind of a little bit of emotional trauma over what happened, and seeing that like the whole media world, I feel like, okay, Street Fight collapsed, and then we're seeing all these other sort of left-wing media outlets collapse. You see BuzzFeed News go down. You're seeing all the layoffs at NPR. Not that I'm saying these are really left-wing, but they're more left than, say, Fox News or OAN or Newsmax. Those types of places that are going to have a ton of money through the recession, and they're going to get all this money pumped into them, I am sure, because they are going to be there to trick people into believing that their economic woes are their problem. The fact that they're unemployed is because of the fact that we're helping poor people instead of the fact that rich people are deliberately siphoning money out of the economy and deliberately setting policy so that unemployment rates can rise. Which is a little bit beside the point. But it does get to that point, that central point of these ideas in terms of improving yourself need to be critically analyzed, and you need to be able to use that discretion, and you need to find the right people to come around you who are willing to use that sort of discretion around you. And I just hate so much when I see that programs and things like that will just exclude you if you're in less than ideal circumstances, but also it's a sign that the people who are running those programs maybe don't know how to deal with less than ideal circumstances. And that's something that really this podcast, I feel like I've sort of drifted and lost my way in terms of the content here because I got more into the actual politics stuff than into personal and social change specifically and self-help and self-growth. But that's what I want to do here is sort of find a way to create almost like a center of excellence or like a think tank around solutions to create optimal performance and the best possible life for people with less than ideal circumstances. And get live feedback from people on the air, like the way Street Fight Radio did, of live call-ins or some sort of live communication and connection and direct feedback from the people as to what the people want to talk about and have journalistically or analytically brought to the forefront. And that's why we have the call-in number at 844-477-7865, 844-477-PUNK, for you to call in with whatever problem, challenge, rant, whatever. Leave it on the voicemail. Yeah, I might play it on here, and I might try to take a hack at it myself. So this episode's getting pretty long. One of the problems I've been having a bit of trouble fixing in the Fixerpunk podcast is that the Fixerpunk podcast has been getting too long. And I apologize that happened again tonight. That wasn't my intent. But let me know if you like the longer episodes. Let me know if there's anything in this episode that actually helped you in any way. And now I have to find a more flexible way to learn some more stuff around personal and self-growth so that I can maybe come back and teach it to you. And we do want to reverse engineer. We are reverse engineering. I'm a fixer punk because I take the intelligence of being a political fixer, a little bit of business experience and training. And the punk part is because I do it for the people like punk rock is supposed to be. And no, this program does not specifically endorse or condone anybody who uses the name punk unless we specifically say so. And hopefully you understand who I am talking about there, but there are plenty of posers out there and plenty of people in the punk scene who just buy into the normal self-help stuff and the more normal motivation stuff, losing sight of the less than ideal circumstances that the values of the scene were supposed to help. But that is an entirely different episode. And even when it's right there at the tip of my tongue, needing to fix the problem of making these episodes too long, I went way too long there. So I think I'm going to make myself wrap up the episode and let you know to follow if you want more. If you actually want more from this podcast, please go and follow the social media. Instagram at Fixerpunk, TikTok at Fixerpunk is the most updated. And also the Twitter at Grayson Nation, GreysonNation. If you have feedback and you don't want to call in, you could also just send that in an email to Grayson, Greyson, at offspeedsolutions.com. If you are a political or nonprofit organization and you're looking for ways to incorporate cultural advocacy, looking for communication support, looking for operational support and direction in terms of reaching your mission for 2024 or for any other season, because we also believe in long-term advocacy around here. If you are a socially responsible business or a mission-driven business that is looking for communications support and looking for a way to stay culturally relevant through social media or through any other communications means, including traditional, I am a consultant in that space, and that is what I do. I love helping, especially those people who have a vision to help positively impact the world, be able to do that better. So go to offspeedsolutions.com, OFFSPEED solutions.com, and take a look and reach out if you are interested in getting my support and advice on your mission and your goals as an activist or entrepreneur. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I hope you'll join me again for the next episode.